Aldrich stared at his claws and wondered when they had started shaking. The lecture hall buzzed with crackling energy as 30 young dragons practiced their flame work. Blues mixed with golds, reds twisted into whites, and every color in between painted the reinforced walls. Professor Hendrik walked between the stone desks, nodding at each display of power. The Dragon Prince kept his head down. 6 months had passed since his fire vanished, and the shame still felt fresh every single day. He opened his mouth and pushed, reaching for that familiar heat in his chest. Nothing came. Not even smoke this time. Just cold air that made him want to disappear into the floor. "Prince Aldrich, your turn," Professor Hendrik called out. Every head turned toward him. 30 pairs of eyes watched and waited. Aldrich rose slowly from his seat, his tail dragging behind him. He stepped into the practice circle carved into the stone floor. Deep breath, focus. He thought about fire, about heat, about the legacy of 3,000 years of dragon emperors who never failed. He exhaled hard. Cold air whistled past his teeth. Someone snickered from the back row. Professor Hendrik's face twisted into something between pity and disappointment. "Perhaps more meditation tonight, Your Highness. Return to your seat." The walk back felt longer than the canyon runs he used to fly. Aldrich gathered his books the moment class ended and rushed toward the door before anyone could offer their fake sympathy or real mockery. His wings folded tight against his back as he navigated the crowded hallways of the Imperial Academy. Other students parted around him, but not out of respect anymore. They moved aside because they did not want to catch whatever weakness he carried. The East Wing Library became his refuge over the past months. Hardly anyone visited that section because the books there covered outdated star charts and ancient poetry that no one cared about anymore. Aldrich pushed through the heavy wooden doors and felt his shoulders drop. Silence. Finally. He walked between the tall shelves until he found his usual corner. A small alcove with a window that looked out over the mountain range. The twin suns were setting, painting everything orange and purple. Aldrich dropped his books on the reading table and slumped into the chair. Rough day? Aldrich nearly jumped out of his scales. He spun around to find a human standing there holding a mop and bucket. The man was older, maybe 50 in human years, with gray streaks in his dark hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He wore the simple gray uniform of Academy maintenance staff. "I did not hear you come in," Aldrich said, straightening up and trying to compose himself. "Sorry about that. I work evenings in this wing. Name's Dennis." The human went back to mopping the marble floor, making slow, steady strokes. He started whistling a tune, something simple but oddly peaceful. Aldrich watched him for a moment, then turned back to the window. He tried to ignore the human and focus on his breathing exercises, the ones that were supposed to help him reconnect with his inner fire. But the whistling kept breaking his concentration. It was not annoying exactly, just persistent. "Are you all right, son?" Dennis asked after a few minutes. The question cracked something inside Aldrich. Maybe it was because Dennis was just a janitor who did not know he was talking to a prince. Maybe it was because genuine kindness had become so rare lately. Maybe Aldrich was just tired of holding everything inside. "No," Aldrich said quietly. "I am not all right." Dennis stopped mopping and leaned on his mop handle. "Want to talk about it? Why would you care? You do not even know me. True enough. But you look like someone who needs to get something off his chest, and I'm someone who's good at listening. Sometimes that's all it takes." Dennis pulled over a stepladder and sat down on it, giving Aldrich his full attention. The words started pouring out before Aldrich could stop them. He told Dennis everything. About the coming of fire ceremony 6 months ago when his flames just stopped working. About the royal physicians who could not find anything physically wrong. About his father's disappointment and his brother's suggestions that he give up his claim to the throne. About feeling worthless and broken and terrified that he would be the first prince in recorded history to never breathe fire. Dennis listened without interrupting. His expression stayed calm and understanding throughout the whole story. When Aldrich finally finished, his voice hoarse from talking, Dennis nodded slowly. "That's a heavy load to carry," Dennis said. "Sounds like you've been dealing with this all alone. Everyone expects me to fix it. To be strong. To live up to the family legacy. Yeah, I know that feeling." Dennis stood up and picked up his mop again, but he did not start working yet. "Can I tell you something? I'm from a place on Earth called Detroit. Tough city, real tough. I lost my job, lost my house, nearly lost my mind for a while there. Things got so dark I couldn't see any way forward. Aldrich looked at the human with new interest. What did you do? I learned a secret. Something that kept me alive when everything else was falling apart. Dennis smiled. But it's getting late and I've got 3 more floors to clean. You gonna be here tomorrow night? Probably. Good, come find me. I'll tell you about the secret and maybe it'll help. Can't promise anything, but it's worth a shot. Dennis picked up his bucket and walked toward the door, whistling that same simple tune. Aldrich sat alone in the alcove as darkness fell outside the window. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. He felt curious. 3 days passed before Aldrich worked up the courage to return to the East Wing Library during evening hours. He told himself he was going there to study, but he knew the real reason. That human janitor had offered him something nobody else had in months. Not pity, not disappointment, just plain understanding, and a secret. Dennis was already there when Aldrich arrived, cleaning the windows this time. The whistling continued as he worked, that same melody from before. Aldrich cleared his throat to announce his presence. Ah, there you are, Dennis said without turning around. Figured you'd show up eventually. Pull up a chair. They sat near the window alcove and Dennis pulled out a small metal container from his cleaning cart. Sandwich. Made it this morning. Want half? Aldrich shook his head. Dragons did not eat human food, but he appreciated the offer anyway. So you said you had a secret, Aldrich reminded him. Right. The secret. Dennis took a bite of his sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. First, I need to tell you about Earth. You know much about it? It is classified as a death world. Category 9 on the Galactic Safety Scale. That's right. 9 out of 10. Only 1 step below uninhabitable. Dennis laughed. Humans evolved in a place that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Predators that could rip us apart. Diseases that wiped out entire populations. Weather that could freeze or cook you depending on the season. Most aliens can't survive on Earth without serious protective gear. Aldrich nodded. This was common knowledge, though most dragons considered it proof that humans were either incredibly tough or incredibly lucky. But here's the thing, Dennis continued. We're not actually that strong physically. We're not the fastest or the biggest. We don't have claws or armor or poison. What we have is something else. Something that kept us alive through ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. What is it? Spite, Dennis said with a grin. Pure stubborn spite. When the universe tells us we can't do something, we smile and do it anyway. When everything goes wrong, we find reasons to keep going. We sing in the trenches during wars. We create art when we're starving. We whistle while we work impossible jobs, Aldrich frowned. I do not understand. How does spite help with my fire? Because your fire didn't disappear because you're weak. It disappeared because you're afraid. And fear feeds on silence, on isolation, on keeping everything locked up inside. Dennis leaned forward. My grandmother lived through something called the Great Depression. Millions of people lost everything. Food was scarce, work was impossible to find, and hope dried up like water in a desert. You know what she did? What? She taught herself to whistle bird songs. Every morning while she waited in bread lines or searched for work, she whistled. People thought she was crazy at first, but then others started whistling with her. It didn't fix their problems, but it gave them something the depression couldn't take away. Joy, defiance, the choice to make noise instead of drowning in silence. Aldrich stared at the human. You think whistling will bring back my fire? No. I think whistling will help you stop being afraid of losing it. Dennis stood up and demonstrated the tune he had been humming. This is the song my grandmother taught me. It's simple. Anyone can learn it. And when you whistle it, you're not trying to force anything. You're just breathing, focusing, and refusing to let the darkness win. That sounds like superstition. Maybe. Or maybe it's practical psychology that humans figured out because we had to. Dennis picked up his cleaning supplies. Try it every day for the next week. When you wake up, whistle. When you're walking to class, whistle. When you're scared or angry or sad, whistle. Don't expect magic. Just do it. Aldrich practiced the tune right there awkwardly at first. His dragon mouth was not shaped quite right for human whistling. But he managed something close. Dennis corrected his technique, showed him how to control his breathing, how to let the sound flow naturally. That's it. You've got it, Dennis smiled. Remember, this isn't about being strong. It's about refusing to quit. Humans aren't special because we never feel pain or fear. We're special because we feel all of it and keep going anyway. Over the following evenings, their conversations deepened. Dennis talked about his life on Earth, about the friends he lost, about the times he wanted to give up but chose not to. He explained human culture in ways that made Aldrich see his own dragon traditions differently. Dragons valued perfection, strength, and maintaining legacy. Humans valued adaptation, community, and finding light in darkness. Your people see fire as identity, Dennis observed one night. Like without it, you're not really a dragon. But humans learned a long time ago that identity isn't about what you can do. It's about who you choose to be when everything else is stripped away. Aldrich's roommate Calix caught him whistling in their shared quarters that week. The other dragons stared at him like he had grown a second head. "What are you doing?" "Practicing a human technique," Aldrich said simply. "Why?" "Because I am trying something different." Calix shook his head. "You're getting desperate. Next you'll be making friends with the cleaning crew." Aldrich said nothing, but he smiled slightly. He already had made a friend with the cleaning crew, and that friend was teaching him something more valuable than all the meditation masters combined. He was teaching him hope. The announcement came during morning assembly 2 weeks later. Headmaster Voren stood at the podium, his ancient scales gleaming under the chandelier light, and declared that the Imperial trials would take place in exactly 10 days. Every student in the academy was required to demonstrate their elemental mastery before the Dragon Council. No exceptions. No delays. Aldrich felt his stomach drop through the floor. The trials were not just another test. They determined everything. Students who passed went on to positions of power and influence. Students who failed were expelled and stripped of their academy privileges. For a prince, failure would mean something far worse than expulsion. It would mean public shame for the entire royal family. The next week became a nightmare. Aldrich practiced his breathing exercises until his lungs ached. He meditated until his mind went numb. He followed every piece of advice from every fire master who would still speak to him, and every single attempt produced the same result. Nothing. The whistling helped him stay calm, but calm was not enough. He needed fire, real fire, the kind that would satisfy the council and prove he was not broken. By day 8, panic set in completely. Aldrich snapped at his professors, avoided his classmates, and spent every free moment in the practice chambers pushing himself harder. His body grew exhausted. His mind grew desperate. And still, no flames came. That evening, he found Dennis in the East Wing as usual. But this time, Aldrich was not looking for comfort. He was looking for answers, and he was angry. "It is not working," Aldrich said, his voice sharp. "You're whistling, your human philosophy, none of it is working. I have 2 days left before the trials, and I still cannot produce a single spark." Dennis continued sweeping the floor, his movements steady and unhurried. "Did you expect it to be instant?" "I expected it to help." "You said it would help." "I said it would help you stop being afraid. I never promised it would give you fire." "Then what was the point?" Aldrich's voice rose. "What good is your human wisdom if it does not actually solve anything? You stand here telling me stories about Earth and spite and refusing to quit. But you do not understand what I am facing. You are just a janitor. What do you know about living up to expectations?" The words hung in the air between them. Dennis stopped sweeping. He set the broom aside and turned to face Aldrich fully. For the first time since they met, the human's expression was not kind or understanding. "It was hard. You want to know what I know about expectations?" Dennis said quietly. "Fine, I'll tell you." He walked over to the window and stared out at the darkening sky. "I wasn't always a janitor. Back on Earth, I was an engineer. A good one. I designed atmospheric processors for colony ships. My work helped terraform 3 planets. I had a reputation, a career, a future. People respected me." Aldrich felt his anger starting to fade, replaced by curiosity and something that felt like shame. "Then I made a mistake," Dennis continued. "One miscalculation in a pressure valve design. Just one tiny error in thousands of pages of specifications. That error caused a catastrophic failure during a test run. 3 of my colleagues died. 3 people who trusted my work, who had families waiting for them at home." The human's voice stayed steady, but Aldrich could hear the pain underneath it. "I lost everything after that. My job, my reputation, my career. But worse than all of that, I lost my ability to trust myself. Every time I tried to work on a new project, I'd freeze up. I'd second-guess every calculation, every decision. The fear of failing again was so strong that I couldn't function." Dennis turned back to face Aldrich. "I left Earth because I couldn't bear to stay in a place where everyone knew what I'd done. I came here and took the only job nobody else wanted. Cleaning floors in a dragon academy, invisible and forgotten. Aldrich could not find words. So yeah, I know exactly what you're going through, Dennis said. I know what it feels like to fail when everyone expects you to succeed. I know what it's like to lose the one thing that defined you. And I'm still here. Not because I'm brave or wise or special. Because I wake up every morning and choose not to quit. How? Aldrich asked, his voice barely a whisper. That's what the whistling is, Your Highness. It's not magic. It's not going to instantly fix what's broken. It's the daily choice to keep going when every logical reason says stop. It's the refusal to let fear win. Dennis picked up his broom again. You think I don't feel like a failure every single day? You think I don't remember those 3 people every time I mop these floors? But I whistle anyway. I choose joy anyway. I refuse to let that one mistake define the rest of my life. Aldrich sank into a nearby chair. All his anger had drained away, leaving only exhaustion and a strange sense of clarity. He had been so focused on getting his fire back that he missed the entire point of what Dennis was trying to teach him. I am sorry, Aldrich said. I should not have said those things. You're scared. Fear makes people lash out. I get it, Dennis smiled slightly. The question is, what are you going to do now? You've got 2 days until the trials. You can spend them panicking and pushing, or you can spend them choosing to keep going despite the fear. What if I fail? Then you fail. And you wake up the next day and try again. That's the human way, Aldrich nodded slowly. He finally understood. The whistling was never about summoning fire. It was about surviving the absence of it. Aldrich spent the final 2 days before the trials doing something that would have seemed insane to him a month ago. He stopped trying to force his fire to return. Instead, he committed fully to Dennis's approach. He whistled constantly, in the hallways between classes, during meditation sessions, even in the dining hall where other students stared at him like he had lost his mind. Let them stare. He was done caring what they thought. Calix confronted him on the morning of the trials. Are you seriously going to whistle your way through the test? That's your plan? It is what I'm doing, yes, Aldrich replied calmly. You've actually lost it. You know that, right? Maybe he had. But for the first time in 6 months, Aldrich felt lighter. The constant pressure to fix himself had been crushing him slowly. Now, instead of fighting against his condition, he was learning to exist with it. The difference felt enormous. Dennis introduced him to other human staff members during those final days. There was Ruth, an older woman who tended the academy gardens. She hummed while she worked, old songs from Earth that she said her mother taught her. Ruth had survived a colony collapse that killed her entire family. 37 people gone in one disaster. She still showed up to work the next day and every day after. How do you do it? Aldrich asked her while helping trim the hedgerows. One day at a time, sweetheart. One day at a time. Ruth's hands moved expertly through the branches. Grief doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it better, and you find small things that make you smile, even when smiling feels impossible. Then there was Bernard, a security guard who lost both his legs in an industrial accident and now used advanced prosthetics. He walked his patrol routes without complaint, never drawing attention to his situation. Dragons see disability as deficiency, Bernard told Aldrich during a late-night conversation. But humans see it as a problem to engineer around. You haven't lost your fire permanently, kid. You've just got a different challenge to solve. Maybe you need a new ignition method. Maybe you need to approach it from a completely different angle. These conversations reshaped how Aldrich understood his situation. He had been thinking of his condition as a failure, as something shameful that needed to be hidden and fixed. But the humans showed him another way. They did not overcome trauma by being invulnerable. They survived by adapting, by building communities of support, by finding ways to continue despite the pain. On the evening before the trials, Aldrich found Dennis in their usual spot in the East Wing library. The janitor was organizing books on a cart, preparing to reshelve them. Tomorrow's the big day, Dennis said. Yes. How are you feeling? Aldrich considered the question carefully. Scared, but not the same kind of scared as before. Now I am scared of the trials themselves, not scared of who I am. That's progress. Dennis smiled. The fear won't go away completely. Humans live with fear all the time. The trick is not letting it make your decisions for you. What if I fail tomorrow? Then you fail. And you know what happens after that? The sun still rises. You still have people who care about you. Life continues. Dennis pushed the book cart toward the shelves. But I'll tell you something. I've watched you these past few weeks. You've changed. You're not the same dragon who broke down in this library a month ago. Win or lose tomorrow, you've already succeeded at something more important. What's that? You've learned how to be kind to yourself. The words hit Aldrich harder than he expected. He had spent 6 months being his own worst critic, attacking himself for a weakness he could not control. Dennis and the other humans taught him something the dragon traditions never addressed. Sometimes strength meant accepting your limitations instead of destroying yourself trying to deny them. Thank you, Aldrich said quietly, for everything. For listening, for teaching me, for not treating me like I was broken. You were never broken, kid. You were just hurting. There's a difference. Dennis pulled a book from the cart and handed it to Aldrich. It was a collection of human poetry, old and worn. Take this. There's a poem in there about a man who learns to dance in the rain instead of waiting for the storm to pass. Thought you might appreciate it. Aldrich took the book carefully. I will read it tonight. Good. Now get some rest. Big day tomorrow. As Aldrich walked back to his quarters, he passed groups of students practicing their flame work in the courtyard. Blues and reds and golds lit up the night. A month ago, watching them would have filled him with despair. Now he just felt calm. They had their path. He had his. Both were valid. In his room, Calix was already asleep, exhausted from his own preparations. Aldrich sat by the window and opened the poetry book. He found the poem Dennis mentioned and read it slowly. The words talked about acceptance, about finding joy in unexpected places, about dancing when dancing seemed impossible. Aldrich closed the book and looked out at the stars. Tomorrow he would face the Dragon Council. Tomorrow he would either pass or fail the Imperial trials. But tonight he was okay. Tonight he had something more valuable than fire. He had peace. And quietly, so as not to wake his roommate, Aldrich whistled the tune Dennis taught him. The simple melody floated out the window and disappeared into the night air. A small act of defiance against the fear, a choice to keep going, the human way. The grand arena filled with dragons before dawn. Nobles from across the empire arrived in ships that gleamed like jewels against the rising suns. Military commanders took their seats in the upper galleries. Scholars and merchants packed the middle sections. The energy in the arena felt electric, charged with anticipation and judgment. Aldrich stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena floor with the other students. 43 dragons, all waiting for their names to be called. Some practiced their techniques quietly. Others meditated. A few whispered prayers to the ancient flame spirits. Aldrich simply breathed and whistled softly under his breath. You're still doing that? Calix asked, shaking his head. Yes. Good luck, I guess. You're going to need it. Above them, the ceremony began. Headmaster Voron's voice echoed through the arena, welcoming the assembled dragons and explaining the importance of the Imperial trials. Students would be called in alphabetical order. Each would demonstrate their elemental mastery. The Dragon Council would judge whether they passed or failed. The first name was called. A young ice dragon named Alice. She ascended the stone stairs and disappeared into the bright light of the arena. Moments later, the crowd roared with approval. Through the viewing crystals mounted on the chamber walls, Aldrich watched Alice create a blizzard that covered half the arena floor. Beautiful. Perfect. One by one, students climbed the stairs. Fire dragons conjured infernos. Storm dragons summoned lightning that cracked like whips. Earth dragons raised stone pillars from solid rock. The displays grew more spectacular as the morning progressed. Every student passed. Every demonstration earned thunderous applause. Then Aldrich heard his name, Prince Aldrich of the Imperial line. The chamber fell silent. Every dragon in the preparation room turned to watch him walk toward the stairs. He felt their eyes, felt their curiosity and their pity and their expectation of failure. It did not matter. He had already made his choice. Aldrich climbed the stairs into the blinding light of the arena. The noise hit him like a physical force. Thousands of dragons packed into the massive space, all watching him. At the highest point sat the royal box where his father, Emperor Draken, waited with an expression carved from stone. His brothers flanked the Emperor, their faces showing barely concealed contempt. Aldrich walked to the center of the arena floor. The space felt impossibly large. The silence that fell over the crowd felt even larger. Everyone knew about the prince who lost his fire. Many had come specifically to watch him fail. Firemaster Hendrik stood at the judge's platform, his voice amplified by magic. "Prince Aldrich, you may begin your demonstration." Aldrich stood motionless. His legs trembled. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to withdraw, to save himself the public humiliation. 6 months of shame and fear and desperation crashed over him like a wave. Then, from somewhere high in the stands, he heard it, whistling. Faint at first, almost buried under the crowd noise, but unmistakable, that tune, the one Dennis taught him. Aldrich's eyes searched the upper sections until he found them. The human staff members, scattered through the cheap seating that the academy provided for service workers. Dennis stood at the front, Ruth beside him, Bernard behind them. At least a dozen humans, all whistling the same melody. A reminder. A lifeline. A community saying, "We see you, we're with you, keep going." Aldrich closed his eyes. He did not reach for the traditional dragon meditation techniques. He did not try to force the fire through ancient breathing patterns or visualize flames in his mind. Instead, he simply whistled. The crowd's murmur grew confused. Some dragons laughed. Others looked offended. Firemaster Hendrik's expression darkened with disapproval. In the royal box, Emperor Dracon leaned forward, his face unreadable, but Aldrich continued. The whistling became his breath, his rhythm, his center. He was not trying to prove anything anymore. He was not trying to live up to expectations or maintain legacy or restore what was lost. He was just existing in this moment, refusing to let fear crush him, choosing joy despite the circumstances. The human way. Something shifted inside his chest, not the traditional dragon fire that came from ancient power and bloodline strength. Something different. Something that felt like warmth mixed with defiance, like light born from darkness. A spark appeared, then another. Flame erupted from Aldrich's mouth, but it was unlike anything the Dragon Council had ever witnessed. The fire did not roar or rage, it danced. Colors flickered and shifted in patterns that seemed almost musical, moving in time with the whistling. Blues faded into purples, golds twisted with silvers. The flames created shapes that resembled birds in flight, then flowers blooming, then stars being born. The fire was beautiful and strange and completely wrong by traditional standards. But it was real, and it was his. The arena erupted in chaos. Dragons shouted over each other, arguing whether this qualified as proper fire mastery. Traditionalists called it aberrant and unnatural. Progressives argued it demonstrated innovation and adaptability. Firemaster Hendrik looked completely lost, unsure how to rule. The noise grew louder until one voice cut through it all. Silence. Emperor Dracon rose from his seat in the royal box. The entire arena fell quiet instantly. The emperor descended from his position, wings spread wide, and landed on the arena floor near his son. He approached Aldrich slowly, studying the flames that still flickered around the prince's maw. "How did you do this?" the emperor asked. Aldrich met his father's eyes. "I stopped trying to restore what I lost. I learned to create something new instead. A human taught me." The emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he smiled. Emperor Dracon studied his son for another moment before turning to face the assembled crowd. His voice carried across the arena without need for amplification magic. 3,000 years of tradition, and it took a human janitor to teach a dragon prince what fire truly means. The emperor looked at the Dragon Council. "My son passes. More than that, he has demonstrated something we dragons have forgotten. Adaptability. The willingness to learn from unexpected sources. These qualities will serve him well." Firemaster Hendrik opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. When the emperor made a ruling, that ruling was final. The council members nodded their agreement. Though several looked uncomfortable with the decision, the crowd's reaction split down the middle. Traditional dragons grumbled about lowered standards and corrupted techniques. Younger dragons cheered and whistled, seeing Aldrich's success as permission to explore beyond ancient methods. The debate would continue for months, but in that moment Aldrich did not care about any of it. He had passed. More importantly, he had changed. His fire was different now, influenced by human philosophy and human resilience. It would never be the traditional flames his ancestors wielded, but it was real, and it was enough. The ceremony concluded with formal pronouncements and awards. Aldrich received his graduation honors alongside the other successful students. When he finally escaped the arena, exhausted and emotionally drained, Dennis was waiting outside with the other human staff members. "Told you," Dennis said with a grin. "You told me I would fail and then try again," Aldrich pointed out. "Yeah, but you didn't fail. That's even better." Dennis clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm proud of you, kid. You took a crazy idea from a janitor and made it work." Ruth hugged Aldrich despite the awkwardness of hugging a dragon. "You were beautiful out there, sweetheart." "Absolutely beautiful." Bernard nodded his approval. "Different ignition method. Just like I said. You found your own way." Over the following weeks, Aldrich's life transformed in ways he never expected. His relationship with fire stabilized. The flames came easier now, responding not to pressure or fear but to the same centered calm the whistling created. He practiced daily, exploring the unique properties of his different fire. It could be shaped and controlled with precision that traditional dragon fire lacked. The musicality of it allowed for applications in healing and art that had never been considered before. But Aldrich's real focus became advocacy for the human staff at the academy. He pushed the administration for better wages, better treatment, and formal recognition of human contributions to dragon society. Many administrators resisted. Dragons had always viewed humans as useful but ultimately inferior. The idea of treating them as equals felt uncomfortable. Aldrich's father surprised him by supporting these efforts. Emperor Draken called his son to the palace for a private meeting 1 month after the trials. "Your experience has given me perspective," the emperor admitted. "We dragons pride ourselves on strength and tradition, but perhaps we have become rigid, brittle. The humans bend without breaking. There is wisdom in that." "What are you saying?" "I am appointing you as ambassador to human worlds. You will represent our empire in negotiations with Earth and its colonies. You will study their cultures, learn their ways, and help us build stronger relationships." The emperor smiled. "You have already proven you can bridge the gap between our species. Now make it official." Aldrich accepted the position immediately. The work was challenging and often frustrating, but it mattered in ways his old life never had. He was not just maintaining tradition anymore. He was creating something new. Dennis agreed to accompany him as cultural advisor. The janitor found the idea amusing. "From mopping floors to advising princes. That's quite the career change." "You were always advising me," Aldrich pointed out. "Now you will just be paid for it." The day finally came for Aldrich to leave for Earth. A shuttle waited at the Academy's landing platform. His belongings were already loaded. Dennis stood beside him, looking up at the ship with an expression that mixed excitement and nervousness. "Going home after all these years," Dennis said quietly. "Weird feeling. Are you ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be." Dennis turned to Aldrich. "But I need you to promise me something first." "What?" "When things get hard out there, and they will, you keep whistling. You teach other people to whistle. You spread that stubborn human joy to every corner of the galaxy that needs it." Dennis's voice grew serious. "Promise me you won't forget what you learned here. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That asking for help is strength. That adapting is better than breaking." "I promise," Aldrich said solemnly. They boarded the shuttle together. As the engines warmed up, Aldrich looked out the window at the academy where his brothers stood watching from a balcony. They still did not understand what had changed in him. Maybe they never would. But that was okay. He had his own path now. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, climbing through the atmosphere toward open space. The academy grew smaller below them, then disappeared completely as they broke free of the planet's gravity. "So," Dennis said, settling into his seat, "want to learn some more Earth songs? I know about 300 and we've got a long flight ahead of us." Aldrich laughed and the sound felt easy and genuine. "Teach me all of them." As the shuttle jumped to faster-than-light speed heading toward Earth and a new chapter, Aldrich began to whistle. Dennis joined in. 2 voices, dragon and human, creating harmony in the silence of space. The tune carried forward into the unknown, a small, defiant sound that refused to be quiet. A reminder that strength was not the absence of fear or pain, but the choice to continue despite them. The human way. And now Aldrich's way, too.